My name is Gary Bracey. I'm CEO of Terra Virtua, and thanks for joining in to our very, very special Twitch live stream where I'm going to be speaking to Nick Percival, the acclaimed artist who's currently working on, amongst other things, Judge Dredd on 2000 AD and Judge Death, and, well, he'll tell us all about it. If you're watching this from the States, I hope you're well caffeinated and wide awake. I'm the opposite. We're on the other side of the time zone, so it's getting a little late where we are, but we're all set. So without further ado, I really am privileged to introduce an old friend of mine, actually, Nick Percival, artist extraordinaire. Good afternoon, Nick.
Hi, Gary. That's a nice introduction. Thank you very much.
I'm totally rehearsed. Right. Great to see you. Great to see you. So obviously we're doing this to launch our gallery of your work on the Terra Virtua site. So this is your first foray, obviously, into digital collectibles and digital art. So hopefully you won't be disappointed by the reception. And I've seen everything that's out there, and it looks fantastic. The art.
Exciting times for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit groundbreaking. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. What we'll do is I'll ask you a few questions, allow people to get to know you a little bit, and then we'll have a look and a sneak peek at what's available in the gallery. And I know also a lot of people have been writing in their own questions, and I've got a few of those written down as well, so we'll go through those later. So first of all, a little bit about your career and your background, Nick. When was your first, do you remember when your first professional painting was?
That's quite young, as far as the industry goes. 19, I think, my first published work was. It was the first published work was actually for 2000 AD and Judge Dredd. I mean, I'd done artwork, obviously, in something I've been wanting to do for years, submitting stuff to Marvel when you're a kid and you're getting the rejection letters and that kind of stuff. I'm going to various comic conventions and so on. And I actually ended up working in a comic book store, became manager of a comic book store. And alongside that, I was creating a portfolio at the same time. And obviously working there, I got pretty good connections then within the industry. I managed to showcase some of my stuff, and that was with 2000 AD, the publishers of Judge Dredd, who liked what they saw. And I went down to meet them, and I got a script on the spot. And I remember on the train coming back from their offices, I got back, and the first thing I did was put my notice in at the comic book store. So I'm not going to do comics. And it was a kind of short kind of horror story that I did for them. It was a bit like a kind of Twilight Zone, sort of one-off with a weird twist ending. And that was many years ago now. Yeah.
And have you still got a version of, not the original, I assume, but have you still got the print?
I've got the comic. I've got the comic that it was still in. I've still actually got, I think it was an 8-page story, and I got a couple of pages left, and I sold some of the others, and I've kind of hung on to those too because it's kind of from sentimental reasons. I don't want to get rid of them. So yeah.
And did you have any sort of formal training in this type of artwork or any type of artwork, or was it just an aptitude you had, a skill?
Yeah, not really. I mean, again, it's like I say, it's something I'd always done from a very young age, and you kind of discover a talent. You become that kid at school, the one that everyone always goes to draw things. You know what I mean? And I grew up on Marvel comics and was into all the superhero stuff, and I was drawing all the time, but apart from a normal like school education, I didn't really take it into further education as far as art goes. It's just something I did alongside other things, looking at a lot of different influences and so on. And and obviously, like I say, got in the industry that way, self-taught basically. Yeah.
That's amazing, because really looking at your style, and obviously we'll go through that later, it's not what I would call classic. I'm a comic book fan as well myself, as you know, and it's not sort of a comic book style. Your illustrations are very, very rich. They're very detailed, and they're every panel is like an individual painting.
Yeah. Again, it's the painted style that I wanted to go for, and I'm very into sort of like painted art. A lot of my influences come from that particular field, and obviously, most comic artwork is black and white line art that's then computer colored. Not a lot of it is fully painted, but it's a style that I've sort of stuck with, and it's nice because you can adapt it for many things. And you can do the highly illustrative stuff. You can do the panel by panel stuff, but yeah, you're right. I mean, to some degree, it is a lot of work. Like I say, each panel could be a little painting in its own right.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. So is it, people like, you said you were influenced by other artists, people like Frazetta and Boris Vallejo and people like that. Were they your typical influences?
Oh yeah, definitely Frazetta. I'm a huge Frank Frazetta fan. I mean, his whole sort of style and how he uses color. It's a massive influence. And then on the actual more sort of drawing side, I'm a big fan of things like Bernie Wrightson, for like the horror type angle stuff, and who himself is massively influenced by Frazetta as well. So yeah, you take a bit of everything really. All goes into the same part. And I've got huge comic collections. So I do like the classic stuff as well. Jack Kirby and going back to that. You can't see it in my artwork, but it's always there in my head. You know what I mean? Those kind of storytellers.
No, fantastic. And funnily enough, I was talking to someone, a fellow artist of yours, and he was telling me that some of Frazetta's stuff, his original stuff, goes for literally millions of dollars now.
It does. Yeah. Amazing. I mean, Conan paintings, like George Lucas that own, Frazettas, and they go for a hell of a lot. They're highly desirable. Yeah, I mean, and they're not very big as well. You see some of the originals; they're really quite small.
Oh, really?
But, yeah, you expect these sort of huge canvases, but they're not much. Yeah, they're not that big. But I mean, it's the ultimate thing. The guy's amazing.
Oh yeah, I mean he's a god in artwork.
Yeah.
So I was looking at your bio, obviously, and it does mention that you've done some work for Marvel and I think DC. What exactly were those?
The Marvel stuff is again their horror line. They did a line. It's called Max. It was a Max imprint. They called it. It was more adult stuff, and it was the Man Thing. They did. It was Marvel's version of the Swamp Thing, basically. Yeah. There's a series called Dead of Night that I did a lot of paintings for that, and it was to be good. It's a bit like the old EC horror comics. It was one of those kind of lines, and so I got to. And I'm a massive fan of EC stuff as well. So I basically got to do all that painterly zombie graveyard type stuff in the Marvel universe as well, which is quite cool. And some Marvel Zombies stuff as well. I did some Marvel Zombie paintings, and DC stuff I've done, bits and bobs. It's. I mean, to have access to those kind of characters that you've grown up with and be able to put your own take on it is fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. It must be realization of a dream to particularly to work for someone like Marvel. That's great. So I know at one point you got into computer graphics and animation. Yeah. Did you enjoy that, or do you prefer the more traditional static paintings? I
enjoyed it at the time, and it was good to get into that, because doing things like animation and 3D and learning how game engines worked and texturing, all the kind of things that to create 3D digital art. I think it improved when I left that side of things and went back to 2D art. I think that improved because it made you see things in a different way. Working in 3D and animation and directing, that kind of stuff, you paid a lot more attention to things like lighting and sort of pacing and storytelling. So in a sense, doing that and then going back into the 2D stuff, I could use a lot of those techniques and apply it. And I think I saw a definite shift in what I consider my abilities and quality from going through the animation and video game side and then back out into the comic book side again. But taking a lot of those skills and techniques that I do. And also that's when I learned to paint digitally as well. Up until then, I've been painting traditionally. So that was acrylics on canvas and so on. So that was also when I got into things like Photoshop and Painter, and Wacom tablets and pens. And so again, it was learning as that technology was just kind of coming in sort of like the late 90s.
Yeah, with very slow computers and
exactly.
Big pixels. Well, that you actually led on to my next question, which is when did you migrate from brush to graphics tablet, and what sort of software do you use now?
Yeah, well, now it's literally just Painter, Adobe, Coral Painter and Adobe Photoshop as the two products I use. I flip between the two. I've got both the programs open, and I literally use one program for one thing and another for another, and just flip back and forth. And to be honest, because I come from a traditional artwork background, I don't use a lot of the tools that are available on those two software packages. I mean, you can do so many different things with those software packages, digital art. But because I come from a traditional background, I pretty much only use very kind of basic painting tools. So I'll still kind of paint the same way that I would have done with traditional paint in terms of undercoats and building colors up and that kind of thing. So I'm probably using less than 5% of what those programs can actually do. I mean, there's loads of stuff, like icons on there. I don't even know what they do. I just think, well, I don't need to do it.
I have visions of the people who've actually written that software just crying and saying, we put all that effort into developing this software and he doesn't use any of it.
I mean, maybe I'm missing a button that I can just press that says complete art or something and I'm done.
Automated.
I'm probably really missing out on something I don't know about.
No, and what's funny is, I mean, from our conversations we've had recently, it seems to me that you still sketch manually the initial outline picture.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah, please.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I still do like to draw traditionally, and that's literally just big sheets of art card and penciled. So for a lot of my comic book work, you have actually got penciled, physical penciled pages of these pieces that do exist. And obviously, but then I will scan in and then I'll paint on the computer. I still don't like drawing. I still like that tactile feel of smudging pencil, and there's something about it I still really enjoy. And then obviously I'll scan the image in, and then obviously digital takes over, which is a combination of the two things, I think. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's great because you do your artwork, although it's digital, it really does have a very, very painted feel. I mean, as I say, it's not your traditional comic book art, which are quite crisp and specific lines and sort of block colors. Yours are very rich and textured paint, which is it's hard to believe that you did it digitally. I mean, it's so very textured.
I think that's the thing, and that's what I try to do. A lot of the stuff I paint it's got things like splatters on it. You can see brush strokes. There's that kind of tactile, textural sort of element to it. That obviously you get with real paint, and the digital tools now. You can replicate that stuff quite well. But and again, I think for sort of the subject matter that I do, a lot of it is kind of horror based, and it's very cinematic. Some of the stories that I've been working on, and that kind of style, I think, allows you to express a little bit more in the artwork because you can do a lot more with lighting and mood. Whereas when you've got line art with computer coloring, and albeit the computer coloring now in things like Marvel and DC is very, very good, it's obviously top rate. There's still a kind of distance because they still want to keep the line artwork. It's still all there. Whereas with fully painted stuff, you really are getting into blending and textures and shapes and lighting, and it's a much more sort of organic look to the whole thing. It works for whatever, different styles work for different things, and obviously this is what I've always sort of stuck with in it, and it works within the genres and the sort of projects that I've worked on.
Do you ever still occasionally go back and actually do painting, or is that just in the past now? Oh, you do?
No, I do private commissions when time allows, and that will be acrylic paints on canvas. I just completed actually a large Boris Karloff Frankenstein painting.
Oh yes, I saw that.
Yeah, that was quite a large piece, and that was on canvas, and that was like full on acrylic painting, varnished, and obviously sent off to the guy that commissioned it. Who was very happy with it, and it's nice. I mean, they take quite a long time to do, and I have to fit it in alongside the regular gigs and so on. What I've noticed actually is quite funny is when you're doing a lot of digital art and then you go back to doing a real painting, I can be painting something, I might make a little mistake or do something I hadn't intended, and just for a split second I'm thinking, where's the undo? Where's the undo? I can't. No, I've got to fix that.
Yeah, the paintbrushes aren't that sophisticated yet. Maybe one day. And I've got to tell everyone out there that I believe this talent is genetic because we're Facebook friends, and Nick has been posting some amazing work from his daughter. He doesn't know I was going to mention this, but his daughter is amazingly talented, and she's doing these makeups on herself for Halloween. And she's obviously inherited her father's taste for the macabre, and they're extraordinary. That's all I'll say. But I think this is going to be a family trait. And
I'll give a shout out to Izzy, who's my youngest daughter. And she's sort of into horror, and she's been doing a different Halloween makeup for Halloween Halloween, so 31. She's done one each day, and not being biased, they're really, really good. You know, she's
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So it's obviously a genetic thing. Just going on to the thing which you're probably best known for at the moment, which is obviously your work on Judge Dredd and Judge Death. Have you ever idea how long, how many pages in total you've done over your career for those particular characters?
I mean, we're probably poaching close to about getting close to maybe 1,000 in total.
Really?
I mean, yeah, if you combine everything that I've done for, the 2000 AD sort of characters, I think on Judge Death, I think I was just hitting around the 250 page mark of these characters. And again, when you think about each one is painted, each panel is painted, all the different images that are going off on there. They're kind of second nature to me now as well, those characters. I've done them for so long and they're so iconic. And you don't really ever get bored, because even though you might be doing the characters a lot, the stories and situations they find themselves in are quite different, quite diverse. So it's something that I've even though I've dipped in and worked for different publishers and still do, and I do a lot of film concept art, production art, they're kind of like a little family that I always keep going back to. It's good to have them there. So it's always, you do one project and then you can do a Dredd story, and it's like a palate cleanser before you go into a big Judge Death series. And then I just consider them as guys that are always around that you can dip in and out of. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I can imagine there's such fulfillment in that, and you're obviously still enthusiastic as you were when you started it. No, that's brilliant. It's quite interesting. You've obviously seen the Judge Dredd movies, and the latest one, which actually I really enjoyed. And the guy who plays Judge Dredd is also in The Boys, isn't he? He's the main. Carl Urban. He's Billy Butcher in The Boys with his Dick Van Dyke type Cockney accent. But it's a good show. That's brilliant. So more recently, or not too long ago, you actually created your own, you wrote and painted your own graphic novel called Legends. I noticed you've got a little bit of a poster behind you on that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was I started developing that actually just as I came out of the kind of video game side of things. So this is probably my first big digital project, and I hadn't done stuff for 2000D for quite a while. And I was like, I want to try something that new, that's something that's mine, basically. So I originally came up with the concept around about 2001, and it was going to be like a spin on fairy tales. It was going to be like a dark fairy tale, taking all the fairy tale characters that everyone's familiar with, like Red Riding Hood, Jack the Giant Killer, Goldilocks, Hansel and Gretel, and so on, and combining them almost into a team, almost like a real dark X-Men sort of team. And then throw them into this weird kind of steampunk-esque fantasy fairy tale world where everything kicks off when this hag, the evil witch, has found a way to sort of like pick them off one by one, and obviously then it comes into big conflict and off they go. And I've got to stress, you hear this now and you sort of think, oh yeah, well, fairy tales, blah, blah, blah. Everything's been done with fairy tales. This hadn't been done when I came up with it. It's one of the things where you do something, so long ago, and now you see all the different sort of fairy tale based stuff that's come out, 20 years since then. But so I wrote a script. I did a lot of concept artwork to go with it. I really wanted to work out and visualize it before I even started doing it as a graphic novel, like designing all the characters, designing the environments, and so on. And set to work probably around about 2000 and probably about 2005 when I actually then properly kind of thought about creating it. Yeah. I know, having after the script and the designs and so on, doing it alongside other stuff. And then we got a publisher involved, so we knew it was, we could find somebody who would actually put it out there. That was Radical Comics at the time. And it ended up being a 100+ page hardcover original graphic novel. So, I wrote it, painted it, the whole thing. It won awards. It came out. It got optioned for film. It was one of these things where it was nice to see a realization of something you'd just been thinking a little bit about in your head into a fully tangible hardback book out there. I still get people now for signing at conventions and stuff. It came out in 2010, so even that's 10 years old now.
Oh, really? I thought it was more recent. That's a while ago. Is it still available on Amazon? And
you can get copies. Yeah, it's I can't believe it's been 10 years, to be honest. But
well, give it a good plug.
that was my first big digital project. You know, I learned to paint digitally as I was doing the concept artwork for Legends. So you can see a kind of progression of my art then. And then obviously, like I say, the whole story is 100+ pages. So that was a big learning curve for me, really. But it was good to see a project from start to finish, and then see it out there. And that kind of dictated a lot of the style that I've done since then on, you know, things like Dread and some of the Marvel stuff and other bits and bobs. You know.
No, absolutely. I mean, some of my favorite works that we have coming out over the next few weeks of yours, my actually favorite one is actually from Legends, and it's the Troll. I love that picture. But we'll get a sneak peek of all of these in a moment. So, and I just wanted to ask you and bring you a little bit more up to date. That what motivated you to come over to the dark side of blockchain, NFTs, and you know, what was the motivation there?
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, we'd had a couple of conversations. I think it was that since, you know, a lot of art is now digital and people have moved, you know, other artists like myself have moved into digital. You know, to some extent, you were losing a kind of possible revenue stream, selling original artwork, selling, you know, that kind of side of things, because there wasn't a tangible product, so to speak, you know. And looking at how this works and this new sort of avenue that's happening, it seemed very attractive place to sort of put art out there that you can start earning again from, like you would do if you sold an original piece of art, you know, like a digital thing where it's true ownership of it, and it's just seems to be, it's exciting and it's new and it's still something I'm getting my head into. And obviously you've done a great job of explaining it and demonstrating it. I think for a lot of artists out there, I think it's, and the way the world's going, you know, lots of, you know, digital, online, VR, this kind of thing. I think it's going to open a lot of doors, and there's a lot of artists are going to say, "Oh, hang on a minute, this is, you know, we're busy creating stuff. This is a perfect opportunity to do something else with it."
Absolutely. I mean, the way I explain it to people is they think, well, you know, why is it valuable if it's just digital when we had paper? Well, it's the same. I always explain, everything's gone digital. Music's gone digital. TV's gone digital. That's Netflix. Movies, everything's gone digital. So it just makes complete sense that this follows. And of course, there's so much more you can do with the painting as well in terms of animation and even audio, which you obviously can't do on a piece of paper.
And in that way, you're creating a new original product. You know, you animate something, and it just takes it to a whole new level, and that couldn't exist in any other format apart from digital, you know. So in a sense, it elevates it. You know, you've really got an opportunity to look at stuff and think, and for artists as well to look at things in a slightly different way. They can create new pieces as well and think with the intention that, oh, I'm going to do a bit of animation on this as well. It's almost a new medium, so to speak. You know.
Absolutely. We have more. Explain more. I'm just reading a question. Someone's a bit more about Terra Virtua and your vision for comic book artists. Will you have more doing the same? It's from Trevor. Well, just before we go into the preview, I will explain, because in case there's anyone here, there's an assumption of everyone who's watching this knows what we do. Terra Virtua is actually a platform where we deal in digital collectibles of some value, of varying value. And because we're using the blockchain, we can make these, we can use the authentication elements of the blockchain, which is essentially a ledger. So that if we say there are only 5 of this particular painting being created, then you can actually go onto the blockchain and check and validate that there are only ever 5 of these made. And that obviously creates a rarity, because some artists, some unscrupulous artists, may do limited edition prints of a painting and say, I've only made 50 of these, and they're numbered 1 to 50. But in actual fact, they could have made 1,000 of them, and you'd never know. On the blockchain, you can actually check this, because what the pieces have got to be all minted in one go. So when we say there's 1 of 10 or 1 of 50, that's all it can ever be. You essentially break the mold once you've released those limited quantities. So Terra Virtua is offering talented artists like Nick the opportunity to display their work and sell their work in a way that they couldn't have done before. And we have a whole platform that allows you to look at this through a 3D art gallery, which you'll see in a moment, and also you can freely download your own environment, which we're calling a fan cave, which is your own little personalized room, and you can put your acquired paintings on the wall, whether it's a poster from The Godfather or whether it's an extraordinary painting from Nick Percival. You can have this on your wall, and if it's an animated piece, it will animate while it's on your wall. So really, really cool stuff, and I would urge you to check out the site www.terravirtua.io, and you can get an idea of everything that's going on. So which is a nice segue into the gallery itself. There you go. That was like telepathy. So we're going to have a quick walk through. Now, what we've got is about 20 odd paintings from Nick, and we're not releasing them all at once. We're releasing them in tranches. And today we're launching the first 8 paintings, 7 of which are in the gallery here. Well, they're all in the gallery here, 7 of which are on our site. One is this one here, which is Bad Clown, which is the one we've been using primarily to promote this exhibition. And this is available for auction on OpenSea. That's OpenSea.io. And if you search for Bad Clown on their site, you can see, you can bid on this extraordinary painting. It freaks me out, actually. Everyone has to think about clowns. What was the inspiration behind this?
Everyone hates clowns.
Hates them. What inspired you to do this one, and what is there a story behind it?
It's an original piece that I came up with. I mean, I think clowns, that's again because of the colours. They're such a visual sort of characters to do, and like I say, nobody I know ever thinks they're funny in any capacity whatsoever. So it's nice to do a sort of dark or evil clown, and that's quite a popular kind of genre in its own right. So I just wanted again to take that almost to the nth level, take it to the take it a step further, and that's why we've got the floating head balloons, and you've got little animations you can see that have been done on the image, which is great. I'm sort of talking about earlier that just little, and it's nice to keep the animations quite subtle, so you still got the you can see the original artwork, and there's just some nice little movements like eye blinking and floating and bits of mist and embers and so on. It just gives it an extra dimension.
It brings it to life, yeah. It brings it to life. It's great.
That was fun to do, and that ended up being used in John Carpenter book of short horror stories. So it was great. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. Fantastic, but not animated.
Not animated. This is what
it's great. It brings a different dimension. And what you can do is when you go through these galleries, just to explain, you can download the app, you can go through this 3D gallery yourself, and you can click on each of these paintings, and you'll get a load of information coming up, the bio on Nick, information on Nick, and information on the painting itself, and also how many versions have been minted, etc., etc. So obviously we've got our old friend Judge out there, and Slain. I don't think this is in our current catalogue, is it? It's not in our first tranche. And there's Slain, which is. Did you actually work on Slain as well?
I did, yeah. I did a series for 2000 AD. It was Slain time traveling and teamed up with William Wallace, Braveheart.
So, right.
Fighting demons and so on. And this was actually a piece that was sort of celebrate the 30th anniversary of the character for 2000 AD, some years ago. So yeah, again, that's the sort of original piece that I created there.
That's great. So let's have a look, a little bit, browse around, see some of the paintings that we've got on show. That's the Red Witch. There's the one I like. That one in the middle. If we can just go into that. That's my personal favorite. I mean, it's all subjective, obviously, but this is the one we were talking about before, taken from Legends, and it's more of a double page spread, isn't it?
Yeah, it was one of the concept pieces, really, that to put all the characters. You've got the purple-headed girl's Rapunzel, you've got Red Riding Hood with shotgun, Jack's on top of the shells. The guy in the foreground is Hansel, and they're fighting the troll, who's who's almost like a medieval Terminator type character that's controlled by the witch that goes after these characters. And I said to Gary earlier, it's my kind of Avengers money shot moment. This is the big. This was the movie, and again, it was used to pitch the film. It's one of those big elements where everyone's comes together at the end and has to fight the final battle. So that's the one good thing about painting this kind of stuff is you've got an unlimited budget because you just got yourself and the canvas and the computer. So that probably would cost about 20 million to shoot, but No problem.
You're slightly cheaper than that, just marginally. So just looking through a couple of the other paintings. This one is Red Witch, isn't it?
Bad Witch, I think, is it?
Bad Witch, yes.
Original
And
piece again.
Legends?
Yeah, again, it's character creation. I was coming up with various ideas. I'm a big fan of Guillermo del Toro's films and sort of how the weird creatures you see in there. So this was me just sort of, on spec, just coming up with, again, a design for sort of like an evil kind of witch type character, but with a different spin, something a bit surreal to her and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of your stuff's very Lovecraftian, isn't it? It's got that sort of visceral feel to it. That's great. More clowns. You've got a thing about clowns, but these are really bad. Really nasty.
Yeah, I can't stand them.
No, obviously, getting your own back. And yeah, we can see, zooming right in there, you can see some of the texture if you go in quite close. There's a lot of detail there when you go through the gallery. But what I wanted to do was sort of focus on some of the works that were actually live at the moment and available in the marketplace. So, okay, I think Ash is just changing the gallery over to make sure we can see some of the current stuff. But obviously, really, really extraordinary. And I need to explain that when you go into the marketplace on the site, you can zoom into the the paintings, and you can see the texture and the great detail of each piece. And then if you acquire one and put it into the fan cave, into your own fan cave, you can really go straight close up to it. And you can see the virtual brush strokes, can't you? Because it does.
I don't think people sometimes realize, when you see an image, and obviously when you see the real high resolution versions, and you zoom in on there, it's you can see every little crevice and specular highlights, and there's a lot to take in, and so hopefully people appreciate that when they see it in that way. Yeah.
I'm sure they will, because as we said before, the classic comic book is a lot more solid color. It's a lot more crisp lines, whereas yours is much richer, much more textured and painting. We've got to go into these and take a look, because there is one favorite of our guys internally, and that is Demon Granny. And if we can go to that first, because I do want to have a explore into your warped mind what created this.
She's hiding. She's alive.
She's around, and also it's there's a lovely. Well, we'll come on to that, but this one, well, I'll let you reveal what this is from. Actually,
this is for the Dark Souls video game, the comic book series of the Dark Souls video game. And
was it a cover or actual panel?
They're all cover paintings. I did a whole bunch of cover paintings for Dark Souls, and this is one that I quite liked because of the duality. You've kind of got the knight and you've got the hollow character, the sort of zombie type ones. So that's my kind of weird version of Two-Face almost, to some extent, I guess. Which I must have been channeling when I subconsciously when I was doing that. That's good. Yeah, I do like that one. I do like the sort of contrast between the two things, and I'm useless at playing the game. I get killed straight away. But it's
hard. It's very difficult. It's a difficult game, but no, it's fantastic. I mean, the whole thing is fantastic. And then on the right, you've got the razor heads.
From the Legends graphic novel. These are just secondary characters. I mean, that's the kind of attention to detail that I like to put in. This is, like I say, from Legends, and they're not even sort of primary monsters or villains or anything. They're just your average street thugs that inhabit that kind of world that I created. So even your sort of secondary characters still got a weird, bizarre look to them, and obviously they take piercing to another level, really. I think
don't show the kids.
So they end up getting a fight with Hansel and Gretel, and they lose in the space of they appear for about 2 pages, I think, and then they're dead.
Right. Okay, no, they're fantastic. And if we go to the one next to it, that obviously is an iconic character there, or three iconic characters, and there's where you can bring up the information on it. So what was this created for? I mean, I actually know Clive Barker myself. He's another Scouser. He's a fellow Scouser.
Yeah. I did 2 years painting the Hellraiser covers for the Hellraiser comics. So there's a load of paintings I did, and that was the cover for the very first issue, and it was also used to promote it. So that was kind of like the main. So obviously you've got Pinhead and you've got the two other Cenobites.
Chattering one, yeah.
These were great because these had to be approved by Clive Barker as well. So I'd get little notes and sketches and ideas from him. So they had to go back and forth. But this was great. This was to come up with an iconic image to sell the first issue, to get people to take notice, and obviously a big dominating image of Pinhead is going to do it. Basically.
Well, and of course, you've got a tough critic there, because I know Clive Barker's an art. Although he's a writer and a film director, he paints as well. He's an artist, isn't he?
He's a phenomenal talent.
Was he kind or very critical?
He was great. I mean, and sometimes a couple of covers, he would come up with an idea, and I get these really bizarre scrawled squirrels, basically, that I get emailed with a few notes that I had to make head or tail of, and then try and think, right, okay, I've now got to try and turn that into kind of like a painting.
Yeah.
It was kind of very complimentary, and and when you think you're working on his babies, so to speak, these are his creations. So to do that, and again, I think it was almost like from one artist to another. He obviously, being an artist, appreciates the kind of different styles and different takes on his characters, and in that series, actually, we ended up creating a female Pinhead. There was a female version of Pinhead who sort of took over Hell. Yeah, really? So again, paintings of the female version, and so that took it into a whole different level. And it was quite interesting period of time there.
Oh, brilliant! I know he lives in LA now, doesn't he? He's out there in Beverly Hills, swanking around. So I thought, and by the way, just had a question. Someone said, "Oh, you're from Liverpool? Are you red or blue?" I am blue, actually. Although I can hold my head a little bit higher this season so far. Yeah, who do you follow?
Well, we were Sheffield United, and obviously last season we did great. This time's been appalling.
Yeah, we can't talk about football. That's a different conversation for another time. But yeah, I'm quite proud at the moment. So we've got some questions from people. We circulated a URL where we could ask people to put any questions to Nick. And I've got a list here, so I'll just read them out in order. Someone called Andrew said, "What made you enter the crypto art space?" In fairness, I think we've covered that a little earlier when I asked you, but thanks anyway, Andrew. Chap called Chris Norton. I'm a big fan, and no offense intended, so there's something offensive coming up. No offense intended, but have you always had a twisted melon, man?
I think so.
Obviously, is it? I mean, has horror always been your key passion, if you like?
I think so. I mean, I remember seeing the Frankenstein monster, and that was just like so iconic. It made such an impression on me, the Karloff version. So I sort of grew up on that side of it, the universal horror things, and then obviously you get into the more current stuff. So I think it just attracts me as far as the mood and the darkness and the imagination and so on in terms of the design elements. So yeah, it's I probably am a little bit twisted, but it's just I paint a lot of regular stuff as well, and obviously a lot of the stories I do have regular characters in as well, just obviously. But it is nice to cut loose on a creature sometime and just go to town with a really, really spooky, scary scene.
I bet, and I noticed TV and movies are getting a lot more graphic, whereas your images, and I mean this complimentary, come across as more disturbing. I mean, they're static images, but some of them can be very, very disturbing, which is obviously the feeling you want to, the emotion you want to evoke when you're painting it. Whereas I think TV and movies are getting a little less creative, whereby they're not leaving anything to the imagination, they're showing it all.
Yeah, they're quite safe as well, I think. Yeah, whereas some filmmakers, like I say, Del Toro, I think, is a good example that his stuff is quite unique, and he's got a kind of unique way to approach a story. But a lot of the big spectacle type movies, they have to show everything, and obviously movies from decades ago couldn't, because they couldn't do it. They couldn't show everything because they didn't have the ability to. And because of that, you did end up with more suspense and, you know,
That's
a nice
right.
build.
And
so
you had to use your imagination. Because with Del Toro, I mean, one of my favorites is Pan's Labyrinth. I love that. That's wonderful. And there are some good ones out there, but they don't leave too much to the imagination. From Anonymous has written quite a few questions. Who is your favorite artist? Actually, that's not a bad question.
That's a big question.
Yes.
It's different for different things, because like I say, because I grew up reading comics and I managed a comic store. I got a huge comic collection, so you know, I like lots of different artists for lots of different reasons. You know, like I say, Jack Kirby, Neil Adams, Bernie Wrightson, Gene Cole, and all this sort of old Marvel 70s sort of John Buscema, the classic kind of real, you know, powerful artists from that era, right through until present people like Mike Mignola's stuff. And, you know, so it's very diverse. And then on the painting side, like we mentioned before, Frank Frazetta.
Oh, yes.
Even some of the classic stuff like Caravaggio, you know, looking at that, you know, that's been a big influence in terms of his lighting and so on. So I don't think I probably wouldn't have one particular favorite artist, purely because there's just so many different influences in there, and I've seen so many different forms of artwork growing up. It all goes in, you know. It's difficult to pinpoint one particular artist, I think.
No, and that's a very fair answer. If someone says to you, "What's your favorite film?" you can't pin it down. There's different genres, the different directors. Yeah, completely get it. Thank you. Looks like we're back in the gallery, and this is the Gory Gang. What is this from? Is this from Legends as well?
No, this was ended up being a Hellraiser cover. It was one of the paintings I did, which was again, it's torture basically, isn't it? The sort of tortured souls. You know, what does Pinhead do to these characters in hell? And obviously, not very nice things, I would imagine. So it's coming up with a way to sort of show some suffering and torture, and just, but again, sort of blending the faces together to give it a bit of a surreal
Yes,
kind of,
because there's a distortion going on, isn't there, in the perspective?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And are we going to get to see Granny?
Have we found her?
It's such a big gallery. They got lost in it. Here we go.
Stalking.
Well, hang on. Well, this is this one's called Zombie Dread. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was for one of the 2000 AD horror specials. I did sort of a big painting that had a lot of the classic 2000 AD characters, but in zombie mode, a bit like a homage to the Marvel Zombies thing, where you take regular characters and then zombify them. But I went back and reworked Dread. I sort of separated it and turned it into kind of a new painting and worked on it more and added bits, and really went to, you know, basically took the R off his badge, so it's Judge Dead instead of Dread. And it was just, you know, again, really, Jed's had it basically. He's lost, he's been zombified. And again, I wanted to put a lot of decay on the image. So if you see, there's like all these kind of scratches and tears and things, just to give it a real pulpy, damaged feel, not just to the character, but to the actual, almost the canvas as well, you know, just to emphasize that sort of to it. Yeah.
That's extraordinary. That's lovely. And we're back in the room again. They're obviously having trouble finding Granny. So I'll go back to the. Do you approach work on covers and illustration differently from interior art? So in other words, your panel art, do you treat it differently to your cover art and your big illustration?
Yeah, I mean, doing the interior artwork is, you know, you're working from a script. So there's a lot more. You're thinking more about storytelling. You're thinking about how the pages flow, what the characters are doing. I mean, in a sense, you're directing then, because you're acting. You know, you're using the characters. They're telling a story. That they've actually got to do something, and you've got to think of how the pages are going to look as a whole, like panel sizes, how that's going to flow. So you do have to. Sometimes you have to restrain yourself a bit, because it's not all about wow moments. It's obviously you're painting a cover, and the cover's there to sell the comic, so it has to have the most impact. Doesn't always necessarily depict what's going on inside the comic. It might just be an iconic image of that particular character rather than an event that's actually happening in the comic. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Like, for instance, that Hellraiser cover is just an iconic image of the Hellraiser and Cenobites, but that scene, so to speak, might not actually occur inside the comic. So for cover, it's all about having a wow, pow, you know, impact, so people see it on the shelf, so it stands out, and it does the job of drawing people's attention to the comic. Whereas the interior artwork, it's all about storytelling, making sure you're just telling the story. So you do hold back a bit, because if you're too showy sometimes on the interior pages, you're damaging the story. You know, it's all about telling the story. That's the most important thing. But as far as an actual physical creating the process, because I fully paint the interiors as well as the covers, the process is still the same. So like I say, I do get bugged. I can do like a little close up of Judge Dredd's face, and I'll be ages painting it, and you zoom out, and that might just be panel 5 in the bottom corner of the page, and it's not even a big deal. You're probably going to gloss over it and move on to the next page. And I've ended up painting it as if it was going to be a cover or something. So I'm kind of my worst enemy. I can't let it go. Do you know what I mean? I sort of like it has to have a certain level of polish before I can let it go and move on to the next.
Nothing wrong with being a perfectionist. Nothing at all. Someone's just popped a question up and saying, "Do you think the future of artwork is digital?" And in relation to that, I would imagine it makes it a lot more accessible to people if you've got someone who's a talented artist and perhaps doesn't have the means to get all of the paints and the canvases and all the equipment. Whereas with the computer, it's just one piece of software, one decent piece of software, and the world is your oyster.
Yeah, I mean,
do you think that's the way it's going?
Well, there's no barrier to entry now. Anyone, I mean, everyone's really got a computer, and anyone can pick up various illustration and painting programs. You know, you don't have to go high end. There's a lot of free stuff out there. There's, you know, it's equally capable of producing stuff. I think where the difference is, as a craft, I think you need to learn techniques. You know, you do need to learn techniques properly. It's not like you can just pick up these, and you'll see a lot of bad digital art, to be honest, because people just jumped in there and on off they go. And in a sense, you know, there's a core skill set you kind of need to learn, whether you're doing digital or traditional. You know, how about drawing, how to build colors, blending colors, you know, composition. These are all kind of techniques, art techniques that you learn. And digital is, at the end of the day, just another tool. But I think it's good that it exists, because it does mean more people can have a go, and it is more accessible, and people can just hit the ground running, rather than spend years learning how to paint traditionally and then moving into digital, you know, which is obviously a process in itself.
That's brilliant. A great answer as well. So because there's no simple answer, it's not a yes or no. And I think we're actually in the gallery now. And finally, I hope this isn't an anticlimax for anyone. But you know, this, as I say, this was a favourite here in Terra Virtua, and this is the Demon Granny, which, you know, scared the bejesus out of everyone. So a little bit of background on this one, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, you know, no offense to very old people, because we've all got parents and grandparents, and we're all going to go that way as well at some point. They do sometimes can look incredibly spooky, and just kind of taking again that to the extreme. There's something where you've got an old person. Obviously, I've really amped it up on this one, but you know, where there's something just not quite right. You know, if you went round for tea, you'd be looking over your shoulder all the time you were there, you know. And again, the Terra Virtua guys have bunked some animation on there, so we've got the twitching eyes and the smoke coming from the mug of tea, and you know, just gives it a little bit more punch, and it's just nice to see. And again, what I do like, I mean, I like texture, so doing old faces and wrinkles and crevices and things, really gives you an opportunity to go in there and go to town on that kind of stuff.
No, it's great. And even little details like the old-fashioned cup with the red rose flower on it, you know, which is typical of what a pensioner may drink from. And again, don't mean to pigeonhole, but, you know, there's a lot of thought, obviously, that's gone into this sort of thing, and the lace around the neck.
Like the zombie thing, everything's got the decay feel to it. Even the canvas itself is kind of weathered and worn, just to sort of emphasize that fact, you know?
Yes. Absolutely. And we've got what else have we got? We've got something we haven't seen, I think. Oh yes, what's that down there? Ah, yes. I'll let you introduce this one.
Yeah, this is
one of my favorites.
Yeah, Through the Dark Diggers. And I've been doing a lot of Judge Death stuff for 2080 at the moment. I'm on a third volume of a series of these characters. And this was actually one of the first paintings I did to kind of conceptualize it in my own head of how I'd approach them, because they're such iconic characters, you know, originally designed by Brian Bolland. But because I was doing a painted version of these, again, it was all about taking it to sort of a different level, sort of breaking the characters down and almost rebuilding them. So again, everything's decayed. You've got Judge Fire, the flaming character who's basically burning apart, constantly burning apart. And then Judge Death there in the background, the big character with all the sort of damaged helmet and is the crevices on the skin. And it's just, I mean, they are the personification of evil, and their ethos is all crime is a life. So, I mean, all life is a crime. So basically anyone living has to die. You know, that's what they do. That's their reason to exist. So we've got Judge Mortis there with the skull head in the background. Judge Fire and Judge Death. The only character not on there is Judge Fear, actually, and that's quite interesting because the reason he's not on there is because he didn't appear until the second volume of the series that I did, so he wasn't actually even in it. So,
right.
Yeah, so he for obvious, so he wasn't there on the promo image that I did to promote it, and this image there that was used to promote the series when it was released. But it was it was great to work on these really iconic nemesises to Judge Death, basically Judge Dredd. Yeah.
Oh, I bet. And someone asked if that this is going to be the start of something with you, Nick, and that you'll be hopefully regularly contributing. And I think part of that's going to depend on what the reaction is to this collection. Really, this is a first for us. We've had some incredibly talented artists doing a lot of amazing crypto art in our gallery, but this is the first large full collection we've actually exhibited from one single artist. And so it's a bit of an experiment. We've tried to be groundbreaking and give the feel of, you coming into an art exhibition and seeing the work of one great artist. So let's see how this goes and see what the reaction is. And hopefully this will be the first of many.
I've got an idea for some very exclusive stuff we could do, and it's so this, and purely just for this kind of platform. So I see this as just the beginning, basically.
That's great. That's brilliant. Well, I think our hour's almost up. I've got one or two more questions, so let me just have a look through. Yeah, another one's asking, and this is one of those difficult ones. There's probably not just one, but who's your favorite comic book character? And I think that's probably not necessarily one you've drawn, maybe one you would love to draw or paint.
I've always enjoyed the Hulk. I really grew up loving that character, and I did a Hulk zombie painting actually. Which was quite fun. So I've got a soft spot for the Hulk, and on the flip side of that, Doctor Doom. I really would love to do a Doctor Doom painting. It's one of these things that I'm waiting for that.
You do seem obsessed with Doctor Doom. I'm on your Facebook feed.
I'm waiting for him to be reintroduced into the Marvel universe and hope they get it right this time. So Hulk and Doctor Doom, put them together in one book, and I'll do some covers for that. It'd be great. Yeah.
Well, maybe we can talk about a special Doctor Doom commission for Terra Virtua. Maybe that's something we can talk about later. So, what's your process for getting into it? This is Charles Reed. What's your process for getting into a new design? Where do you draw inspiration?
Again, it can depend. If it's obviously a comic strip, I'll look at the script and see what's required in terms of that kind of thing. Whereas you might actually get some indications from the writer, and you might chuck ideas back and forth of what characters should look like and how the design affects the story and so on. But when I'm doing stuff purely for myself, it's really just a few things that I'll look at what I've not done before. It'll still stay within the same kind of genres, but I'll look at a character and think, I've not done something that's more supernatural or something that's more fantasy based. And again, I'll look around. Film inspires me. Certain images from films, biology, looking at creatures, wildlife, that kind of thing. You look at everything. It all gives you an idea of how you can incorporate that. There has to be some groundedness to the characters, I think, to some extent. Even though everything's really freaky, there's still an element of grounding there, believability. So that if that thing did come walking towards you in a dark alleyway, it would look tangible. It would be real, rather than something where you think that's just so out there. It doesn't make any kind of physical sense. You know what I mean? It's all creating big dark characters, but there's weight and there's form to them that would be terrifying to see, so to speak. So
there's got to be some grounding in reality. Yeah, absolutely.
It scares you more then, because in a sense, to some degree, it could still be, as to something that's so out there that it's just, it's freaky.
Freak you out. And just with something, when the writer writes the script, which you then have to create the paintings from, and I've been into comic books for a long, long time, and it's something that's always puzzled me, and I've always wanted to ask. So how much direction do you get, particularly if it's introducing a new character, right? How much of a description do you get, or how much can you just say, go nuts and say, I will do my version of this character?
I've been lucky enough to work with writers, a lot of collaborations. So if they come up with a new character, obviously they've got an idea of how that character looks in their head and how they think it should look, and we'll give you that. But they do tend to appreciate that the artist is going to have a massive input in that. So a lot of times it's like I'll get information as, this is how I see a character looking, but obviously you do your thing, So a good example is the Judge of Death series. Is I was redesigning the Dark Judges, so there it was more the writer was saying, oh, the Dark Judges got destroyed, and now they've been in these sleep chambers and regenerated, and they come out and they look different. Go ahead and do your thing, So that artist was like, great. I've got
that's brilliant.
They trust you, right, to do their job. They trust the artist to do our job, and the best collaborations, obviously, when we go back and forth. So I like the one we're looking at now, actually. Again, that's the sort of redesign of Judge Death. So it's still Judge Death. It's still recognizable as the classic Judge Death with this kind of portcullis on his helmet and so on. But again, it's just taken to a real kind of more gothic, disturbing, extreme level. And again, a little bit of animation on his mouth there, which is quite cool.
Yeah, it sort of brings it all to life. I mean, it's quite interesting, that mouth thing, because when we saw the Hellraiser, that chat, I can't remember the Cenobite who chatters, I call it, and it's just the mouth. Yeah. That really freaked me out. That was the most horrifying one to me. It was just horrible, that mouth just moving up and down all the time.
Again, and that's the Hellraiser painting you showed earlier. That's a chatter in the background.
Yes.
And, I think it's disturbing because no eyes. Sometimes a very good design thing with creatures is don't give them eyes. The alien's not got eyes. It's all mouth. It's no eyes. And for some reason, that's really disturbing. It really creates a distance between you. Then, it's quite an easy. If you look at a lot of disturbing creatures and creature design, a lot of artists and concept artists won't give them eyes. And as soon as you take that away, it's disturbing. It's weird.
Because the eyes are the mirror to the soul, they say. So if you've got no eyes, then got no soul, I suppose, is the conclusion with respect to people who don't have eyes, of course. Just very quickly rattle through a couple more, because we really are short on time. But this is how long's a piece of string. How long does it take for you to create a painting? Now, I know that can vary depending on the panel, but let's say a cover, right? And something like what we've just seen, the Dark Judge, or the Dread piece, or anything like that. Typically, do you allow yourself a set period of time, or do you just let it flow and let it take its course?
Again, some commercial stuff, deadlines are involved and so on. I mean, you could spend forever on a painting and not let it go. I don't tend to spend more than 3 days on a cover, possibly 2. It's just because if I get to about 3 days and it's not done, then it's either I'm tinkering, then I'm messing around with it. It's like I'm not really improving it, and I could come back in a week and I could tweak some of the lighting. You can always mess around with it, but you get to 3 days and you don't feel like you've got a really nice finish. That includes the drawing as well.
Right.
So from a blank page to a finished image, if you go beyond 3 days on like a nice, really detailed painted cover, then you're taking too long. You're not making it better, really. At the end of the day, you're just messing about.
It's just tweaking. It's quite interesting because I'm from a video games background, as you know, and whenever we made games, the developers made some extraordinary games, but they were never finished. They could always spend another month, another 6 months tweaking it, making it better and better and better. Is it the same with you? Do you always look at your pieces and think, I can always make it better, but I've just got to stop?
Yeah, I mean, some stuff just for my own sake. I've gone back to paintings that I might have done a year ago and then started messing about with them again, just for the hell of it, just because you spend that distance between a piece and you look at it with a whole fresh set of eyes. You might completely change the color scheme, completely change some of the lighting just for the sake of it. So, but luckily, from a commercial point of view, you've got to hit your deadline, so you've got to let it go. It's like because it needs to go off and get printed and whatnot.
I'm sorry, I've just been interrupted on my watch here. This is amazing. All the Hellraisers have sold out.
Oh,
we've only just launched the gallery, and all the Hellraisers have gone. So obviously, a lot of Hellraiser fans. So time for one last question, and I think this is a good one to finish on. This is from Mr. Anonymous again. Your favorite monster movie? Just straightforward, just off the top of your head.
It would be the original Frankenstein. The original Frankenstein.
Which one? The original Frankenstein. Really?
Yeah. I mean, I know people consider The Bride of Frankenstein in those two as the better accomplished film, and it is in terms of the technical side. But it made such an impact on me, and I can watch that so many times. I love that character. I love that.
What was his name? William. Who was the director?
James Whale.
James Whale, that's right. Sorry, yes.
I mean, I like a lot of stuff like Nosferatu and like the Del Toro stuff, and even the classic zombie stuff and so on. But if I had to pick a favorite and one that I'd go back to, and it was just made such an impact on me. I love that movie, love it to death.
Amazing. Well, it's obviously he's provided you with the inspiration for an entire career. So yeah, that's fantastic. And of course, I would also include. I suspect you've got. I know you're a huge fan of John Carpenter. So
yeah.
I've got to ask you personally, and if it gels with mine, your favorite John Carpenter movie?
The Thing.
Yes, like mines. Wonderful. We won't talk about the remake. Nick, thank you ever so much. Obviously, we could talk all day and chatter all day, but it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's a privilege to have your stuff in our gallery. Thanks so much for placing your trust and faith in us, and hopefully it will be justly rewarded. To everyone out there, hope you've enjoyed this little bit of insight into Nick's brain, and I'm sure he'll paint a picture of it at some point in the future. But enjoy his work. I mean, just take a look at the gallery, lap it up, enjoy his work. Take a look at his website as well, and you can see the diverse amount of work he does. Thanks for your time. Thanks, everyone. And hopefully we'll be back again in the not too distant future. Thanks so much, Nick. It's been an absolute pleasure.